All right, so hopefully you have this sheet in front of you for what we're about to do. Quick reminder on transformations. Say we have some function. I'm going to be really generic and use this box to represent some function. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be square root, it could be a linear function, it could be a quadratic, all sorts of choices. The same thing happens every time when we're dealing with functions. If I put something out front to multiply by, that's going to give me a vertical stretch or shrink. It's a stretch when it's greater than 1. It is a shrink when it's between 0 and 1. All right, so this is going to be our vertical stretch or shrink. If we put a negative out front, though, that's going to flip us over the x-axis. Now, I use -1 because I didn't want to put a stretch with it. But if it said -5, it would be a vertical stretch of 5. The negative is going to flip. So this is reflection over the x-axis. All right, f of x equals whatever our function is, and we add 5, and it's outside the function, so we're adding on to it. This is always up or down. Positive 5 would move it up 5 units, and a negative would move it down. And then finally, we could add or subtract things inside. So if I put +2 inside the function, that's going to move it left or right. Remember, it's backwards from what you expect. When it's plus, it's going to go left. When it's minus, it's going to go to the right. All right, so let's go back to that sheet that we sent you on Edsby. So we're going to look at the notes side. We'll go through a few. The first one's done for you. I'm going to start with number 2. So the first thing I'm going to look at for the reflection across the x-axis, is there a negative hanging out in front of the function? Now, it's very important that you know what the function is. So in this case, our function is square root. All right, so that's what we're asking about at this point. So there's a negative out front. We reflect across the x-axis. All right, vertical stretch or shrink. Are we multiplying by anything in front of that function? In this case, no, we are not. So there isn't one. All right, horizontal shift left or right inside the function where that x is. Am I adding or subtracting? In this case, I am not, so I'm not going to shift left or right. However, outside the function, I have that +2. That is going to be up 2 units. Once again, it is super important that you know what your function is. So if I'm looking at number 3, my function is the exponential function, in this case with a base of e. The inside is the exponent. When you're talking about an exponential function, the exponent is the inside part. So is there a negative out front? No, so no reflection. All right, inside, vertical stretch or shrink. Are we multiplying out front by anything? No, we are not. So there's none there. Now for left and right, we look inside. We have x +1. All right, that +1 tells me that it's going to move. We got to remember, though, +1 means to the left one, not to the right one. And then finally, that -5 hanging out there. It's outside, so that's going to be our down 5 units. All right, let's look at number 4. Start with, is there a reflection over the x-axis? Well, positive 1/2, it's not negative, so we don't have one. 1/2, that is your vertical stretch or shrink. Because it's between 0 and 1, it is going to be a shrink. In this case, it's going to be half as tall. All right, left or right, inside the log function. This one's the one people mess up. You have to remember that the log is the function, so the inside is just that part. If there are parentheses, then the whole part, x minus 3 would be in there, but there's not, so it's just the x. So we are not going left or right. That -3 is outside of our log, so in this case, we will go down 3. During the Zoom class for Mr. Medling students, we will work on the rest of these. Anybody else who's using this video, check with your teacher.